Oh, I'm not letting. Matty Lazar, I want him. Hello.
Hi there, that's a little better, right?
There we go. Yes, that's good. How are you?
Okay. Can't hear you, David.
Oh, hey, there we go. Good to see you, Mati.
My pleasure. How does that look to you? Good?
Handsome. I'm telling you.
Go.
Well, I don't know. For the grand icon, I'm not sure.
I'm telling you, I'm excited about this. I dressed for the occasion. I knew I was gonna meet with you.
I could bring a jacket too, but you know, I've decided not to.
It's okay. It's okay. You look very official.
Well, you know, black is a slimming color. We know that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Who is this young lady who I don't know?
Hi, my name is not Brith Shalom. My name is Melissa.
Hi, Melissa.
Yes, I'm actually going to change that. And I'm going to wait a little bit to let people in.
Good. How's the balance? I mean, how's the sound? Okay.
Yeah, I know. Sounds good.
Great.
Hear you great. Yeah. You know, Monty, if you can, is there any way you might even tilt your screen a little bit down? We see kind of from
You mean like that?
Great.
Oh,
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
It's a little camera here.
No, that's perfect though. You're well framed now.
Okay, good. Well
Yeah.
framed. That sounds like
Roger Rabbit. Is that?
either that or the Marx Brothers.
Exactly. Melissa, could you please make me the host so that I can screen share a few clips?
I would love to do that. There you go.
Awesome. You know me, I have control issues.
Melinda, it was funny you said you're not Brith Shalom. I have a friend whose name is Beth Aaron. That's her married name.
There you go.
Yeah, so there you go. She went into a shop ride in New Jersey, and apparently there's a shul named Beth Aaron too. And
That's what I was thinking. Sounds like a synagogue.
and she walked in. They said, "Oh, everybody, this is Beth Aaron," because a person walked in, and it was a synagogue that they were used to having this special
Okay, that's so odd. I had all these people in the waiting room, and they all seemed to disappear, and I don't know.
That's because you made me the host.
Oh, you're going to do it? You're letting people in? Oh, it's because it took away all of my capabilities.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll make you the co-host.
Okay.
So
you took all power away from me.
Yeah. So now you can let fun. But I can still multi-pen. So if I want to, let's say I want to spotlight you, and I want to spotlight me. So there we go. That'll be the two of us.
I don't know. I'll go to Lori's desk.
Cool.
All right. All right. Well, I'm going to change my name again because Barbara's about to swap with me.
Okay. Hey, Monty, I didn't ask you this last night, but I found this really delightful clip from the Zamir Choral Foundation about the Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And there's like 2 minutes of you working with the choir that I'd love to share. Are you comfortable if I do that?
Sure, from the story and the song. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah, that's the chamber choir.
Yeah, it's great. I love how you're working with the choir. I got the experience of working with you, so I know what that's like, but I think everybody will find that really interesting.
Yeah, I'm happy, but thanks for checking.
Yeah, of course. I don't want to blindside you with anything. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't agree to that.
Yeah. Well, I was shocked. I thought you were going to say you found a clip of me with my band Teku, but you didn't do that deep research.
No, I did find that. That was when you had your beard and
I had several more hair. Yeah.
Yeah. You had a high tenor voice, Monty.
No, I could squeeze out an F, but I had it had to be prepared with good voice leading, but other than that, that was really a great group. The name was Teku because we couldn't figure out what the name should be. And we were arguing about it. We looked at each other and we said, Teku. Because that's the trick. Tishbi, you know that phrase, right? Teku, Tishbi yataretz kushir vabayot. When Mashiach, when Eliyahu comes, that's Tishbi, will come in and resolve all questions. So that's like a tie. In fact, in soccer in Hebrew, when they say it was a tie, they say Teku. because there's such a Jewishly cultured state that it even comes into the sports arena. It's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Barbara, good to see you.
Good to see you. Do you
Hi,
want me to
Barbara.
let
Yeah, let's go ahead and let people in. And Monty, just so you know, our group will show up more as we go.
Whatever.
This is kind of the lunch hour.
I'm happy to have a conversation just with you.
I know, me too. This is a machai. Excellent. Here we go. Good to see everyone. Excellent.
no?
We'll wait a couple of minutes and let everybody come and join us. I don't want them to miss any pearls, Mati, that you're going to lay on them.
Well, we can give a little reward to the people who are on time. You know, there's always that.
Spoken like a true choral conductor.
True. Right.
Excellent. Where are you now?
I'm sitting in my office in on the Upper West Side
Okay.
in a building called the God Box, which is a building for 501c3s. It's situated directly behind Barnard College, which used to be affiliated with Columbia University. And you cannot have an office here unless you have a 501c3. And as a result, the Rockefeller family actually built this building and charges very little rent because you're a 501c3. And it's a fantastic, we're on the top floor. And if I roll down the blinds, you wouldn't be able to see me, but you could see Riverside Church and the George Washington Bridge.
Oh, sure. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
So what is that? You're like 116th or
Close, a little further north, 120.
120?
20
Okay.
Claremont Ave.
Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Yeah. So is that the Zamir Choral Foundation offices are there?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, yeah, like you said, let's go ahead and get started because I already feel crunched for time because I know there's so many things I'm going to want to talk to you about. And, you know, it's just we only have 1 hour together. And so I'm going to already apologize for not getting to everything that I want to. But this is a real treat for me to get to welcome you to some of our friends and Brit Shalom family. For those who don't know who you are, I'll give a quick introduction and they'll get to know you, of course, during our conversation a lot better. But Mati Lazar is, or Matthew Lazar is the director of the Zamir, the founder of the Zamir Choral Foundation, as well as Hazamir, and is really the leading force for Jewish choral music right now in the world. And we'll talk about what those different groups are, and Mati, you'll help me break it down for everybody because there's Zamir, there's the foundation, there's Hazamir, there's different subgroups of those things, but is performed with everyone from Bernstein to Barenboim to Meta, with Theodore Bickel to Debbie Friedman. Your choirs have gone all over Israel, the United States, Montreal. You perform at Carnegie Hall. There's so many places that you're involved. And the beautiful thing about the work that you do that I find so inspiring is it's this beautiful blend of Judaism, of real Yiddishkeit, with the classical music, and not just classical music, but choral music and community. So Mati, thank you so much for joining.
Pleasure to be with you, David.
So Mati, let's just kick it off if we could. So if we're in an elevator together and I don't know what the Zamir chorale is, and we're on our way down in the elevator, how would you explain to me what Zamir, the Zamir chorale is?
Well, how many floors do we have to go before we get to the Golem and get off would be my first thought. But I would
That's
say,
so Jewish. You answer a question with a question.
of course, and you're right too. So the Zamir Choral Foundation is really the umbrella organization of Jewish choral activity in North America and to a certain extent in Israel. And our goal is to promote and to teach and to sanctify Jewish identity using choral music, using Jewish choral music, which of course is a combination of music, which stimulates one half of the brain. It's a very great hook. And text, which is really the history and the culture of our people. And when you combine those two together in the context of the paradigm of community, which is what a choir is, you're on the road to identity and peoplehood and a successful future of confidence in our people and our destiny.
So you first got involved with the Zamir Chorale am I correct? This doesn't even make sense to me when I try to do the math here, but are my notes right that it was in the 60s, in the early 60s, you were with the Zamir Chorale?
Yeah, the 1960s, correct. But when it was first created, it was Zamir Chorale was the second name of the ensemble. The origin of the Zamir choir, what became the Zamir Chorale, was the Mossad summer camps. It was a Zionist Hebrew-speaking camps, 3 camps ultimately, created in the 30s and the 40s by Shlomo Schulzinger, a Zionist educator. And it was called the Mossad Choral Group. That's how original and low to the ground it was. And then when the person who, Stanley Sperber was the tennis counselor actually in Mossad camp, one of the Mossad camps, and he conducted the group, and people had such a good time that they decided to continue during the non-summer months. And I joined the group early on when it was still called the Mossad Choral Group, but an attorney spoke to the founder of the Mossad camps and said, you know, this could be dangerous. You have 18 teenagers driving around, and who knows, if someone has an accident, someone's going to have a lawyer for a father. So you should really figure out a way of encouraging them to change the name. And the person who was the attorney actually was the one who secured our 501c3 way back in 1966, 67. And that's how we changed the name to Zamir, which was really a quote from Shir HaShirim, Et HaZamir Higia, V'kol HaTor Nishma Ba'artzenu, the time of the turtle dove. Of course, Zamir now means nightingale, but there are other thoughts as to what it actually really means. But Zamir traditionally has meant nightingale, and that's really how we got our name way, way back.
So you mentioned 1967, Mati. You were 19 years old and you were already the assistant conductor for Zamir Chorale. Is that right?
Correct.
See, this baffles me because, you know, you and I met, I sang in your choir, not in Zamir, but at Park East Synagogue was where we first met. But all of the choir directors I had were so much older than I was and had so much experience. And to think of you at 19 years old, having the ability to lead a choir, I mean, were you born with that confidence? Or were you absolutely intimidated working with singers that were probably 2 and 3 times your age?
Not really. And then the singers were not really 2 or 3 times my age. They were a little bit older than I was. But I was a pianist by the time I was 4 years old. In fact, I learned the alphabet from the names of the keys. And when the teacher tried to teach us H, I said, there is no H. Little did I know that in German, H is really B natural. But that's how way back my musical training went. And I actually studied with a student. There was a great piano teacher named Leshetitsky, who was a student of Czerny's, who was a student of Beethoven's. That's how far that legacy goes back. And she was the last student of Leshetitsky. And so we had a great music theory, music training. And I just knew a lot just from playing and from hanging out with good musicians. And my parents were musicians. My sister was a musician. So it was in the family. And I didn't even think about it.
Am I right? Your sister is a harpsichordist, right? In Israel?
My sister is a harpsichordist and piano teacher in Israel.
Where in Israel is she?
She's in Rehovot.
Okay. I have a sister in Ra'anana.
Oh,
But and your parents were, you said your dad was a pianist, your mother sang.
Right. My father actually played clarinet, probably poorly in Juilliard, but he was a very good pianist. And I grew up in a wonderful environment where, I'll give you a typical Shabbos, was we would go to hear Moshe Koussevitzky or his brother David Koussevitzky, whoever was on for that Shabbat. And then after Shabbos was over, my mother would sing Schubert songs accompanied by my father. And there's this leader, which you probably know about, Who is Sylvia? And my mother's name was Sylvia. And we heard that song over and over and over. And after Schubert and Schumann came Gilbert and Sullivan. And with my sister and I being so small that we could sit on the leaves of the baby grand that we had. And then we'd finish up by watching Sit Caesar and Your Show of Shows. So that's like the upper 1% of luck to be born into that kind of a household, confident Jewishly, confident musically, confident Americanly, if such a word exists, and just a total joy.
So we're going to talk about Hazamir in a few minutes, but just because we're talking about your training as a pianist, I want to share a clip, if I could, from the Hazamir Gala concert in 2019. This is the Ose Shalom, where Mati, you're accompanying at the piano. For how many singers do we have in this choir about?
There were 400 singers from the US and Israel, and Nurit Hirsch was our honoree, which is why we were singing her classic opus, Ose Shalom.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll do a screen share here and let's give this a listen. I hate to stop it. You'll forgive me, Mati. I'm cutting it short because there's so much we want to get to, and there's other musical selections. I hope you'll forgive me for stopping it.
Thanks for sharing it.
No, it's great. I'm curious, as you listen to that, does your conducting and choir ear, are you hearing things that you would want to go back and rehearse with the choir and do again, or things like that? Or what do you experience as you listen to it?
Well, what I experience when I'm watching it and listening to it is a great pride and joy in seeing 400 Jewish teenagers from 40 chapters across the United States and Israel being together, feeling together, thinking together, and being confident in who and what they are, and singing their hearts out and not even realizing how they're modeling community and unity for the audience.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. I heard you say in an interview that your parents brought you up to realize there was no conflict between being an American and being a Jew. and that there was no conflict between being a classical musician and being a Jewish musician. But I think in Hazamir in particular, but in all the work you've done, what's so amazing is the way that there's also no difference between an Orthodox or a Reform or a conservative or an American or an Israeli Jew. We're all Am Yisrael, all Klal Yisrael, and that this music is the vehicle through which you unite. Is that fair to say?
That's a very accurate statement. We're pluralistic, we're transgenerational, transpolitical, transformative, and the Israelis learn a little bit about what it is to have a pluralistic religious experience, which they don't really get an opportunity too much for in Israel, as most of us know. And the Americans get a chance to see that the Israeli kids who are on their way to the Israeli army are not what they're portrayed in the American media very often. And everyone comes away really feeling, at least on the Hazamir side, that this is really just one community of people who love the same music, who love to talk about the same kinds of things. And for me, this is another gift that I got from my parents about no value, no judgment. What's your red line? Is it love for the Jewish people or not? And understanding the destiny of the Jewish people, but basically it's about education. And we're a Jewish youthful music, a Jewish musical youth movement as far as Hazamir is concerned, but it's really all about the education. You know, as a conductor, you learn to see the difference between the truth of the score, the facts of the score, and interpretation of the score. And that's a useful skill in society and in life, to try to get to what the facts are, and then try to appreciate different interpretations, and to really be able to sink your fangs, if I can use that expression, into the joy of being together with nothing stopping you. In fact, at our NAJCF, our North American Jewish Choral Festival, which is really getting people as far from the left and as far to the right as possible. And the only thing that people are really interested in asking each other is, do you know any more tenors that we could find for our choirs? That's
great. You were talking about in 1967, you had another experience too at 19 that I'd love you to talk about. There's a story I heard you say about when you were supposed to go to the Zimriya, and the experience that you had there. It was right after the 6-Day War broke out. And there's a story about you and Vivian picking up a hitchhiker. Could you share that with us?
Well, it wasn't just me and my wife Vivian, my now wife Vivian, but it was the Zamir Chorale bus, which was on tour in Israel just 6 short weeks after the war. And we were on the way. I'm not even sure if we weren't coming from the airport actually. And we picked up an Israeli female hitchhiker. Because of course that was what everyone would have done and still does in Israel today. And she got on the bus and she asked who we were, and turns out we were a choir. She started singing Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And no one had ever heard that piece, certainly no North American Jewish teenager or anybody, because it was really basically an Israeli phenomenon. You know, in Israel, right after the war, no one sang Hatikva after the war. Everyone was singing Naomi Shemer's classic Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. She sang it, we learned it, and about 2 weeks later, Danny Kaye came and conducted and sang that piece with us at Binyanei Ha'omah, this big auditorium in Tel Aviv.
Wow. There was this video I heard you talking about that you were singing with the choir, you were conducting the choir on Mount Scopus. And it was right after it had been liberated from the Jordanians. And with the mines that were detonating in the background, they were kind of accompanying but they were being set off by the soldiers, by the Israelis, as opposed, they were meant to kill us, but in fact they were being, secured.
Right, that was a very powerful moment for us to be singing on Har Tzofim on Mount Scopus, which at that point, if you were on the stage and turned around and looked at Arei Yehuda, the hills of Judea, there was no parking lot. There was just off the stage was a Bedouin with sheep. That's how close you were to the original imagined history of our forefathers and ancestors and foremothers, if you have three mothers or whatever the right phrase is for that. And while we were singing in performance, the Israeli soldiers were detonating the mines that the Jordanians had placed there before the war during the 19 years that the Jordanians controlled that territory. And one of our singers, David Berger, who is a great composer, wrote a piece called Songs to Jerusalem, which portrays and describes that incredible moment where we were participating in Jewish history and we all felt it. It was a messianic time.
It reminds me so much of these, there's this great book that came out, I think 2016 or so, a compilation of Leonard Bernstein's letters. It was about 1,000 pages of just his letter correspondence and how he wrote his teacher, a different Kusevitsky, Serge Kusevitsky in Tanglewood. And he was writing about how he was conducting, then it was the Palestine Symphony Orchestra in 47. And the bombs were going off in the background as he's conducting Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Chorale Symphony. And hearing that story from you just really reminded me of that. That's so interesting that there you are 2 decades later, and you're conducting also in Eretz Yisrael with bombs going off in the background for your concert.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Serge Kusevitsky, who really he was the one who gave Bernstein his first opportunity. And there's a very amusing story that it turns out that Bernstein, Kusevitsky wrote a piece called Music for Bima. And it was very exciting to people who care about Jewish music. It turns out that Bima was the name of Kusevitsky's dog. So there shattered that illusion.
That's terrific. I want to play a minute because you mentioned Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. I've had the opportunity and the privilege of singing underneath your conducting and working with you. But for those who aren't familiar with the way you work with a choir, it's just an instructive excerpt I'm pulling out of a larger video about that Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. So I'm going to share that for everybody now, and we'll listen to that for a moment.
We're looking for a point of light and then warmth.
Mati is a very special conductor. He's very picky. He notices every little thing, but we learn so much from it. Not only do we work on the pieces themselves and on the actual notes, but he talks to us about the meaning of the songs, where they come from, the composers, the lyricists. Not only do we just like stand on stage and sing out notes, but we actually know what we're singing, that there's meaning behind it.
Sing that one. Yeah. Okay, so we're still thinking about the Choma, and you need to be reaching us into the heavens with Yerusha in a tune that everybody knows. You know they know it. They know that you know that they know it. That you know it. That they know that you know it. So you have to do something really powerful with it, and the simplest thing to do is be extremely simple. Ladies and gentlemen, let them supply the emotion.
Mati's demand in conducting is really empowering because it makes me realize that when people set high expectations, we can meet them if we work hard enough. And so if we don't get it right away, he keeps trying because he knows we're going to get it. He doesn't give up on us. He believes in us. And so we achieve it in the end.
I left every rehearsal feeling like I had just run a marathon. It makes you feel like you're part of something not only like bigger than yourself, but extremely unique and important to the history of the Jewish people and to more specifically Jewish choral music, because Mati's an expert in his field. He's the best there is, basically. So, yeah.
That must be such nachas to watch those singers. And are you in touch with them regularly?
Yeah, the singers in Hazamir, even when they become alum, or some of them, the Israelis, when they go into the army, we have a strong relationship. Our alumni love the community that they experience in Hazamir, because it's really the only place that they can be exactly who they hope to be and feel completely free in being as Jewish as they want to be and as musical as they want to be, and combine those two forms of expression in a very carefree, not careless, but carefree way. They need it, they want it, and they long for it. And when we have alumni come back, we have hundreds of them coming back in America and then in Israel too, because this is the one place that they can be. This is the one place that they can feel they can express their entire beings without judgment, and yet at a high standard. And that's really you mentioned classical music before. It's not only the classical musical style, but it's the standard of classical music, where it's really, and you heard a little bit of that in the clip. If you expect and you have great expectations for even young singers, they thrive on it. And I know I did as I was a child performer, or a child pianist, or even a child singer. Once you see the beauty and the truth of rising to a standard, it could be even when you're learning a little bit of your haftarah, you want it because you see what the potential is. And we're lucky to have each other in this experience.
So could you talk to me about when you first came up with the idea of the long event? And you know what I mean by this longer lead up to the Sunday concert when everybody arrives on the Thursday, and the genesis of that.
Well, it's connected to the idea that it's not just enough to perform, because the performance is just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, or the tip of the ice cream sundae. It's what happens in the work that goes on beforehand. That's where the community really comes about. The rehearsals are really the joy, because you can experiment, you can share, you can tweak. Everyone gets a chance to really evolve and to learn. And of course, there's the social activity for the teenagers. They come together Thursday, Friday, over Shabbat. And Shabbat for a Hazamir weekend is really extraordinary, because we have Reform services, we have conservative services, we have Orthodox services, and we have a women's service. And of course, many of our singers, and I mean many of our singers, are really unaffiliated whatsoever. And what's interesting is that you have, because the parents of the kids are not around, you'll find Orthodox kids kind of sneaking into a Reform service to see what that's like. And you have Reform kids coming into to an Orthodox and the conservative movements, and to see what are the choices? What are the choices? And it's all safe because everybody knows everybody. And it's the social connection, it's the development of the music connection. That's why I created the North American Jewish Choral Festival for adult singers, because it's one thing to come together and have a concert, which sometimes people mistakenly call a festival. You know, a choir festival means that different choirs showed up for one day and they performed. But if you're not getting up and having breakfast and not going to sleep at 2 a.m. after having sung your hearts out, you're missing what a festival really is. Getting to know everybody in a very personal way. And then when you're singing with them, and let's remember in choral music, not only are you singing together, you're literally breathing together. And you know, when I was a young kid, I dreamed about what it was like to really be in sync, breathing with someone else. And here you have hundreds of people breathing, thinking about the same thing, being together, being alone. It's the epitome of what the dialectic of the individual and the group is all about.
I saw one of the programs you had for the festival, and I just have to ask you, because I'm dying to know, what is reflexology for Jews? What is that?
Well, that's an old festival, right? That was one of the first ones. Reflexology is the system by which a massage, so to speak, of the foot is really connected to the chakras and the various energy flows. And some people who have had migraines, for example, I'm giving you a very out of the box, not out of the box, but out of thin air. People who have migraine headaches often are treated by rubbing their big toes, because there's something about the forehead and the head and that's connected to the big toes. That's one form of reflexology. But for me, the real point of the reflexology for Jews, which is what you brought up, is how is it that Avraham Avinu is making converts? What does he do? He washes people's feet. He washes people's feet, and all of a sudden they're alert to some other force in humanity. And if you connect that to breathing better, and then you realize that half of God's name, Yud He Vav He, is the breath character, and God changes Avram's name to Avraham, and then Sarai, with that nasty diphthong at the end of her name, is barren until God changes it to a character or name that has a breath to it, and all of a sudden things clear up. Then you can pay attention to the end of Psalm 150, Kol Hanshama Tehallel. Everything that has breath, it should praise God, because it's all about the breath, in breath, out breath.
Wow, Yeshkov. That was good. As a singer, I love that. That's so. You mentioned Kol Hanshama Tehallel, and you mentioned the weekend that's spent together. It's probably a good opportunity then to show a clip that I have from. I think this is 2013. I think at the NAJCF. And you'll see everybody immediately. This is a melody that our choir does at Brit Shalom every Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and so it'll be pretty familiar to our folks on the call. But Monty, do you want to set this up with anything other than how did this come about? You were asked to just stand up on a staircase, or what happened here?
Well, this was, I don't remember the year it is, but we've, since the very first North American Jewish Choral Festival in 1990, when we were at the Concord Hotel, Alav HaShalom, we decided that we wanted to have a big celebration with Farhesia in public, so everyone else at the Concord would see what we were doing. And so we sang the Lewandowski Hallelujah, which is Psalm 150. And we sang it on the staircase, and we've proceeded to, at every hotel that we've gone to, found some kind of staircase or a substitute for a staircase. And I want to tell you something really beautiful. At the American Choral Directors Association, which is a gathering of non-Jewish choral conductors, sometimes 5,000 at a time, there's a tradition in the Western music, meaning Christian music culture. Whenever you hear the Hallelujah chorus, the famous Hallelujah chorus from Handel's Messiah, everyone stands up, because apparently the King of England stood up. We don't know exactly if it was for spiritual reasons or something else, but he stood up. And when I conducted the Lewandowski Hallelujah at an American Choral Directors Association convention, they all stood up because it was the Jewish Hallelujah chorus.
I love that. I love that. Okay, great. Here it is. Let's give a listen to this. You'll notice our friend, is that Mizrahi there?
It's Mizrahi talking to Yoram Gaon.
There we go.
The iconic Israeli actor and singer.
That's great. I've never heard that like alargando you do, where you stretch it out in the middle like that. That's fabulous. Did you come to that on your own? Where did you get that?
Yeah, I got that because in that particular moment in the score, and thanks for bringing it up, there's 3 against 4. The tenors and basses are singing a dotted A16. This might be too much inside baseball for your listeners, but the tenors and basses are singing a dotted A16s, and the sopranos and altos are singing triplet eighths. And that is, they don't get it right at any tempo because everyone's learned it wrong, but at least you have an opportunity to set it out right. And that's why I slow it down there, to really enjoy that, you know. So thanks for bringing that up and giving me an opportunity to show how meticulously we try to approach the music.
I love that. Talk to me for a minute, if you don't mind. We'll also open it up in a few minutes to maybe take some questions for some folks on the call if you're interested in doing that. So get your questions ready if you're with us and want to ask Matti something. Talk to me about the difference, if you could, between singing in a shul as part of a service and the performing that you do on a stage. Because I had the opportunity to sing with you at Park East for Slichos together. But I haven't had the experience and joy of working with you on a concert stage and that kind of thing. So talk to me about that difference and distinction.
Well, we'll have to rectify that. So, so thanks for bringing that up. You know, music is called a heilige Kunst, a holy art, even when the text and the circumstance is not religious. But when you're performing a service, and theoretically it's geared to getting either the attention of the community and presenting to God the request of the community. Gerson Cohen, who is the chancellor of Jewish Theological Seminary, once had a beautiful statement. He said, the rabbi tells the people what God wants, but the cantor tells God what the people want. And in a synagogue situation, the choir is representing the people along with the shaliach tzibur, along with the messenger of the community. And they're supporting, because at least in the Orthodox community that we were talking about, there is no accompaniment. So whatever chords are going to occur are going to need to be provided by the singers. And when I say chords, I mean harmony. Without the harmony, the melody is unique and sometimes powerful, but also black and white as opposed to color television. So it's an emotional thing to know why are you saying these words? Is it part of a service? As opposed to singing the same text on a concert stage where there's an audience and it's a bimkum, it's a substitute, it's an ersatz religious experience. Of course, when you're on stage singing non-religious text, there's no question that it's not a religious kind of service, but it is a spiritual thing. And the spirit is the same. I think one of the differences, I thought you were going to ask this, the difference about when you're actually performing as in the service or when you're listening to the service, because this is, for me, a very interesting dichotomy that most non-performers don't think about. When you're listening to a performance of the Houston Symphony, or you're listening to a great cantor, or a great choir, you can pursue whatever insight you have that the music is taking you to. But when you're the performer, if you have more than a cognitive nod to that moment, the whole performance and the whole service falls apart. And that's the tension of being a spiritual person who is performing at the same time.
Matti, there's a question, and Andy, I'm going to read your question out if you don't mind. Okay, I got a thumbs up. So Andy, who is a dear friend and congregant, puts out here, there's a concern that a few of us have that choir performances, and Andy's very deliberate with his verbiage, so the choir performances as part of davening in shul doesn't feel quite like davening. I love good music, good choirs, good performances, but in shul choirs are difficult for me. How would you respond to Andy?
Well, I think there is something called active listening. It's the kind of thing that happens when you go to hear the New World Symphony. you're inspired, but you don't feel the need to sing da 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 da. You can let someone else do that job for you while you pursue your own psycho-emotional depth and resolve whatever inner issues you're dealing with. And if it leads to divine worship, all the better. So the choir can provide that. On the other hand, community singing is a beautiful kind of expression. There's nothing as exciting as being together with everyone singing the same thing. And the most successful services that I've been involved in, very often with my good friend Jack Mendelssohn, is a potpourri of different kinds of listening, kinds of active performing, where the congregation sings tunes, either a Debbie Friedman tune or a Shlomo Carlebach tune, or they listen to a classic cantorial piece, or even sometimes like in the Chazara and the repeat of Musaf, where they just provide the humming, and the cantor is improvising, and they're doing a 1 or a 4 or a 5. There are different. There are lots of musical. To quote, I can't remember the varieties of religious experiences by William James. The variety of musical religious experiences, I think, can all be explored and are all legitimate, and there's no reason to choose necessarily one all the time. A service that has all of them, I think, provides a window into the variety of human experiences. You know, they say about Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our forefather, had 13 children because his personality was so complex that he needed 13 children to express all different aspects of that personality. Well, our religious worship, I think, is so complex, and can be, and our human experience is so complex, that why not have different experiences, different musical experiences that allow us to listen, to sing our hearts out, to observe, just to be there and let the music wash over us as we meditate.
We talked about Hazamir a little bit. We kind of talked around it and didn't quite get our hands on exactly what it is. And I want to make sure that we're very clear about this. 39 chapters, is that right, in the United States and Israel?
I think it's 40 now. Yeah.
40. Sure. They rehearse every week the same repertoire, the same musical repertoire. It's open to teenage singers, Jewish singers, and it creates an environment for Jewish teens, I heard you say this, to express themselves musically and Jewishly around the world.
Correct.
So how long has Hazamir been going on now?
Well, Hazamir is now in his 28th year. It started with 1 chapter in Manhattan, and now has 30 chapters in the US, I think, and 10 in Israel. It's hard for me to actually keep track on a numbered basis. And these are all chapters. They're not necessarily individual choirs. Some chapters, and the reason why is because they're all, when they get together, which is another example of the greatness of choral music, some chapters might not have enough tenors, for example, but another chapter might have enough. And then when you combine the chapters and you combine all the singers together, you really, the strong and the weak contribute to the success of the endeavor. You're a baseball town, so sometimes you need men on base. You need base runners to get the RBIs in. So you need the combination of the strength of the singing and the people who know how to bunt that phrase across. And it's a beautiful way for different levels of singers to really participate. That's the best way I can kind of express it.
I knew it wouldn't be a conversation with Monty without a good baseball, Dodgers or Jackie Robinson analogy there. We had to get that in. We had someone in the comment just bring up, we do have members of Brit Shalom that participate as well in Hazamir. We have a local chapter in Houston at the Jewish Community Center at the ERJCC, and they also have participated in the larger weekend as well. A question just came up, do the kids audition?
The kids audition, it is an audition choir. If you need to be able to hold your own part. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be able to sight read. If you're musical enough and you can hold your part, then you're capable of singing. We also have a Haza Prep, a preparatory program, and I think there's a prep program in Houston as well, where we teach basic musicianship and musical vocabulary. It's the only Jewish prep program in the world, actually. And just just so I can kind of brag a little bit, the conductor of the Hazamir chapter in Houston is Sophie Lilando, who happens to have been a graduate of Hazamir. So how thrilled we are that in a linear way, we have Hazamir graduates who are now conducting chapters of Hazamir. It shows the natural evolution success of this program.
Tell us a little bit about Zamir Noded.
Zamir Noded was created by Hazamir alum who wanted to continue their high standard of singing and could not find any high standard of singing, especially of Jewish music, in their college or early adult choirs that they could find in the New York metropolitan area. And so they came to me and they said, it's not fair. Just because we graduated for Hazamir and we don't really want to hang out with more adult singers than us in Zamir Chorale, you need to find a way of serving this community. And this is an awesome group of people. They're spectacular, and when they perform, they're really performing. I mean, they've got, as you'll see, I hope in a clip, you'll see their heart and soul about it. And it's really a tremendously talented young people. I don't know which clip you're going to show, but they don't even need me to conduct sometimes. They're in love with bending phrases, and they're in love with bending phrases without having anyone tell them how far and when and where to do so. They just intuit it.
Yeah, I'm going to play the Sovevuni,
Right.
which is incredible to me. And what first of all, just pay attention when you're listening to this. First of all, this is completely a cappella. There's no piano accompaniment behind this, which adds an extra layer for some choirs of difficulty, because you don't have the piano to rely on. You have to just trust the intonation and everything of the choir around you. But to me, what blew me away was just seeing how joyful these singers were in the choir. It's just clearly they're just in ecstasy singing with one another. It's a real joy.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Let's get this. Oh, let me try one thing here. I mean, I'm breathless just listening to that. Are you? Because I'm trying to breathe with the singers. It's so amazing. It's such a high level of choral ability. I mean, it's you could. It sounds like the Robert Shaw Chorale, but like a chamber version of it. It's incredible.
Yeah, their passion, their joy, their love of being together. I mean, it's tangible. Makes me weep when I think that we haven't been able to do this for a year now. But of course, everyone feels that way, and everyone is just waiting to get that feeling back. But these kids have it in their brains. I call them kids, but they're in their late 20s. But what an enthusiastic bunch you can see, and of course. For the choir members who are listening here, this is what happens when you sing by heart. When you sing by heart, as these kids do, and those are lots of words that they have memorized, and they're not all Hebrew speakers, but they know that when they're free to experience that joy, or that's it. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Suzanne earlier in the comments had put a question out. Could we address at some point when we might be able to sing in choirs again? And of course, that's the question that we all have in our hearts, very heavy right now. I saw some of the virtual work that you've done as well with Hazamir, actually singing Hazamir, the actual song Hazamir. It was like a little micro thing there. But no, it's true that it's lovely to have that, but there's no replacement for really being in person with the group. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's choral singing is, Vivian says, is a team sport. You can't do it by yourself, and you can't do it on Zoom, even though you have some technological tricks that you can play. But there's nothing like being together, really, really being together. And I can tell you, for those of you who live for optimism, that in Israel, our Israeli chapters are already rehearsing in person, some not even social distancing, not even necessary, according to the latest government edict. Israel has different edicts every week. Sometimes they have different governments every week. But this really one of the few governments that really is paying attention to choral singing in such a direct way. And the latest edict is that for performances, if you're rehearsing for a performance, you can sing unmasked, you can play unmasked. We want people, of course, to be social distanced if possible, and usually they can be. But in Israel, to highlight for our viewers, everyone over 16 is going to be vaccinated, and everyone in Hazamir in Israel is already vaccinated, double vaccinated. So
wonderful.
Yeah,
something to really look forward to. And also, a real dream would be for our Brit Shalom choir to come and join you at the North American Jewish Choral Festival in a future season. That would be a real thrill for us. I know in the somewhat distant past, that had been something where we had participated, and it's been a while. So I'd love to see that, so we could come and join you.
We'd love to have you. And people should know that the greatness about this, one of the great things about this choral festival, unlike other choral festivals where you come with your choir and you perform as your choir, and only that, at the North American Jewish Choral Festival, yes, you come with your choir if your choir comes and you perform with them. But whether you come as an individual, you come as a member of a choir that's appearing, you then participate in what we call instant choirs. Choirs which we put together, and people self-select which choir they want to be in, whether they're advanced or whether they're Morano choirs. They're really not sure if they're singers or not, and they like to just kind of hide out. So we have 5 or 6 different levels of choirs. Everyone self-selects, and everyone feels great because there's a home for everyone, whatever your level of skill, I would say.
So just so I understand, Monty, so if I'm not in a choir and I want to come to the festival, I can still do that and participate.
Exactly right. In fact, the festival was really designated that way. So individuals could come and become part of choirs that are created on the spot.
That's beautiful. Monty, I'm looking at the time, and just like I predicted, I mean, I swear I've gotten like this far into the things I wanted to ask you and talk to you about. I mean, I wanted to talk to you about Solomon Rossi. I wanted to talk to you about Moshe Kosovitsky. I wanted to talk to you about your incredible partnership and marriage with Vivian, and how you've built this whole legacy together. I mean, there's just so many things. So I hope you'll agree to come and do this again in the future, because I'm a huge fan of yours. I remember that Slicha service with Ron Donenfeld and Rabbi Schneier, and being there at the front of Park East, and Alan Dershowitz was a few rows behind us, and just singing the Hirschman Shema Kolenu and all the different pieces. And I remember when Chazan Helfgott would all of a sudden go into a totally different key, you would just look at us and go, try to outline a chord real quick that we had to like do. And it was so fun. It was such a thrill. You're such a mensch. And if anybody thinks that, this is somehow some veneer that you put on for PR or something, this is the way Mati is in every single rehearsal or interaction. He's a generous person, and you're a generous person. I should talk to you in second person. And it's so kind of you to join us for this. So thank you. I really appreciate not just this interview, but everything you do for music, for Yiddishkeit, and it means the world to all of us. So thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be in a relationship with you, David. You're such a mensch. You present so beautifully, and you are beautiful in that way, and at a high level of musicianship. And that's what we're looking for. Jewish musicians who are mentioned at the same time that they have the knowledge, and Jewish leadership who know how to behave and do behave, and are interested in the destiny of our people, and know how to do it in a professional way with knowledge. And that is the real secret. What knowledge is power, we used to say, and that's really what has made the Jewish people survive all these centuries.
Well, beautiful. In the last 90 seconds, I want to just send us out with music, because there's no better way than to end it actually with music. I have the last clip I want to share is the finale from the 2019 Hazamir Choral Festival. They are singing the eponymous Hazamir. This is at Lincoln Center. And what's so lovely in this, you'll notice that in addition to the 400 singers you see from Hazamir, you have also all the conductors from the regions and chapters, and all the alumni from Hazamir that join on the stage. There must be, 600 people or something on, it's huge.
We're not allowed to say how many people they are, because then they'll never invite us back to Lincoln Center stage. But it starts with 400 singers and 40 conductors and 80 alumni, 100 alumni. But
yeah,
we'll keep that between us.
You got it. Okay, so nobody say anything to the stage crew, but it's a beautiful way to finish it up. And Mati, thank you again so much.
A pleasure. Look forward to the next time.
Okay, here we are. Oh, sorry, I clicked that. Have to do the right video sharing. Okay. That's a wrap. Thank you, Mati.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. It was a very
wonderful.
nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
having this up
Thank
here
you.
today. Thank you.
A treat.
Thank you. Looking forward to being able to sing.
Amen.
Man.
The Viat HaMashiach, yes.
Yeah.
Sooner than Mashiach, I hope.
Right.
Mm, a lot of us are vaccinated already, so, the older folk.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. It's so nice to see our kids from Houston have an opportunity. When I grew up, I didn't have that opportunity till I got older, but oh, it's wonderful to have the kids,
Yeah.
doing it. Thank you so much for keeping this up.
Our pleasure. This is why I created it, because I was a teenager when I sang in Zamir, and there was no place for Jewish teenagers to get any kind of experience like it.
Yeah, I had to wait till I got to college to do Zamir singing. I didn't have any chorus at my synagogue in Dallas, Texas. So
Yeah.
I was
When
kinda
I was in college,
we
I
had a
think
little bit of
Zamir
youth
was only in
chorus,
New
like
York
that.
and Boston.
Well, Zamir was that's the adult choir.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I was talking about the college age one.
Well, but in those days, Zamir Chorale started out as a high school and as a college group.
Right.
And then as is usually the case, the college group grew older.
Yeah, I don't know. But I remember hearing, my sister sang in the one in Boston, and I remember hearing them thinking, just a few years earlier, I was in Cleveland. I don't think we had it. So the kids today are really, really lucky.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great experience for them. And now with all these teenagers around the world, it's and actually on Zoom, which is the way we're rehearsing in America, we have pods. So there are kids who are in the Miami chapter who are rehearsing with kids in the Albany chapter. In fact, one of the kids in the Albany chapter thinks that he's a member of Miami, and he has a Miami Azamir t-shirt.
The weather is better usually in Miami than in Albany.
Yeah.
I think so.
But thank you very much. This was great. And there's several of us, as you can see, that are sort of singers. And we're looking forward to being able to do some kind of singing again, soon.
Yeah, singing is great, but don't forget you can listen to music and read the music, and it's in your brain. The trick question is, what's the greatest performance you ever heard, Maestro? And the answer is, when I read the score of the Beethoven Symphony by myself. Because you can hear it. If you can hear it, you can get that. Your brain doesn't know if it's real or if it's just in your brain.
Mati, I had a teacher that used to tell me that the word amateur comes from ama in the Latin, which is to love.
Love. It's
so
true.
like amore, or somebody's amorous.
Yes.
So if you're an amateur, you do something out of love, and that's the highest level. That's the highest iteration of what you can be as an amateur. You should strive to be an amateur.
Right. Torah
That's
lishma.
great.
Torah lishma. You do it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
And not because you're getting paid for it. Although, that the Jewish musicians or musicians in general are like the Levites. They don't own any property. They're
That would be,
yeah, their pay is the service of God. That's what they're doing.
I'll have to tell my voice teacher that.
Awesome, Mati. I know you have a million hats you wear, so don't want to hold you up here, but it's
No,
just,
I'm enjoying myself. So we still
Oh,
have
good.
4 minutes if you want to, any other questions or any other comments? Or
Well, so how many high school groups do y'all have here in the United States, and also, I guess, not just in Israel, other countries too, right?
no, we're right now in Israel and America. We've had some in England and in Spain, but it was too tricky to do that, and it really depended on personalities and who could stay in those positions. In America and in Israel, it's much more stable community building, and no one is really leaving those places. So, but we're in the future, Hazamir 2030. I expect that between Zoom and real life, that we'll have members in South America and even in Australia.
Yeah. When I grew up in Texas, we had part of our United Synagogue region was Mexico. And so we went to Mexico and sang with the congregations in Mexico City. And it was really fun.
Mexico has a very good choral consciousness, like Texas. I mean, my God, Texas all-state choir has 300 singers and I think 30,000 applicants.
Wow.
So, that's the scope. Or as they say about the Jewish people, the Jewish population is smaller than the margin for error in a Chinese census.
Mm.
Wow.
Well, I certainly hope you can come back because this has been just a wonderful hour and maybe giving me a little bit more optimism about being able to sing, particularly as the technology on Zoom seems to be that you actually can more and more sing without a lag or with much less of a lag.
Yeah, as people were saying a year ago, as soon as the vaccine is discovered, all the geniuses will be turning their attention to how to fix Zoom for singers. So maybe that will come in.
Right, sure.
Monty, I had a friend of mine who is in the opera world send me over a link to this new program called, it's made for rock musicians to be able to play together. It's called Rock Out Loud Live. Have you heard of this?
No, there are I know about some others called Jamulus and some, there are other systems, but for some of them, you all have to be in the same general community. For
Right.
others, you need to have the same kind of equipment that goes into the server. And you need people who are really, for whom that's the only way in which they can do it. We've been rehearsing online by singing call and response or unmuting sometimes for a humorous effect, or just having singing to recordings is a very successful way of doing it. But we know it's no substitute, and things seem to be coming back. And it's only because part of my life is living the Israeli life that I feel that way, because I'm really in touch with what's possible, and they seem to be heading in that direction. Audiences are a different thing, but we don't care if we have an audience when we're singing in a rehearsal. We just want to get together and sing.
Yeah. We did a virtual choir for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur with us, and we could only do a fraction of the selections that we would normally do. The choir here has a wonderfully rich tradition of doing all kinds of great things, from Janowski to Lewandowski to Zulzer, whatever. I mean, a lot of the Messina things, but also really wonderful, more contemporary selections as well. I can't wait until we can have the choir back.
The real challenge will be when things go back to normal, quote unquote, whatever that is, and we're singing together, how quickly the complete appreciation of having the facility and the ability to do what we love so much, how soon we lose that awareness and go back to taking it for granted. And that will be the measure of how spiritually we've grown. And I'm not too optimistic about that, because given human nature, when the danger is over, people have a tendency to go back to taking things for granted, not really being observant in the true meaning of the word. So it's the job of us Levium to try to refocus people's attention on what we've lost and maintain contact with what we've lost when we regain what we've lost, but still be aware of that tension.
I'll plant this seed with you, Mati, because this is just a dream that I have that I don't know if this would ever happen, but I have, in all my conservatory days, I always had a connection to Elijah. All the baritone solos from Elijah those were all my audition arias from "Is Not His Word as like a fire," and and to be able to do that with the Zamir chorale, and to really have that full kind of call him louder and the back and forth of that would be just a fantasy that I have one day.
It's a great fantasy. It would be easier to do that with an Israeli choir because they really, that's the kind of repertoire that you can do to try to get a performance of Elijah together in America would require serious concert funding because of course you need an orchestra, otherwise it would be hard to do. But the whole story of Mendelssohn is such a fabulous story, and this would be a good opportunity. For the anniversary, I think it was he was born in 1809, I think, and in 2009, I think I did a whole series of programs about Felix Mendelssohn, including trying to figure out what his bar mitzvah parsha would have been, because his father converted him,
Right.
but his father, of course, one of the richest men in Europe, who was bankrolling Napoleon, and his father waited until his mother-in-law had passed away to convert Felix and his sister, because otherwise she would have disinherited them. And there was no way he was going to lose out on that money. But Felix always knew that he was Jewish, even though I think he said, isn't it ironic that I, a Jew, was really the promoter of the Bach St. Matthew Passion? And my sister is an expert on this. And it turns out, of course, that why is Mendelssohn an expert on Bach? It's because Bach's children were the teachers of Mendelssohn's grandmothers and her sister. And they owned the actual handwritten scores of Johann Sebastian Bach.
Wow.
That's a whole other story that my sister sometimes gives that lecture at the choral festival. It's the Bachs and the Mendelssohns, and it is quite a story.
I should send this to you at some point, Monty, but I found in this old Tara Publications, this great Jewish classics, I found you're talking about Schubert, they have a Yiddish version of Ständchen, the Schubert's Serenade. Yeah, it's great. It says, Stille Schweiben meiner Tfilis durch der Nacht zu dir. Instead of German. It's really sweet.
Yeah. Well, Schubert actually did like Jews. He wrote Tov Lahodot. He wrote it in Hebrew.
Yeah.
And he didn't write it as a kid. He wrote it in 1827, the year before he died, because Zulzer was friends with him, and he wrote in Hebrew. Besides Miriam singing Gesang. So
Amazing.
Well, the most amazing thing about it is that he, as a good Roman Catholic, he repeats the word Lehishamdam Adayad, to destroy them, about the evildoers. It's like 15 times in a row. We don't repeat words, but he was really into repeating that. And it's another great baritone piece. It was phenomenal, with a nice high F and a low F. That's a beautiful thing from Jewish music lovers of Schubert to really pay attention to that.
You're talking my language. Schubert's probably my favorite composer. I've done a few sessions on Zoom just with going through Schubert Lieder, and it's that's my passion area for sure.
Yeah, yep. This is the trick question. Who are the two of the greatest composers of opera? Well, Brahms and Schubert, because they really didn't write any. Schubert wrote Rosamund, and he gave up after that.
Yeah. Yeah. He did okay, though. It was 700 songs and symphonies and chamber music, and then he dies at 31 years old. He's
just incredible. What an incredible turnout of genius. And I mean, even younger than Mozart, just incredible. Although, he wasn't so good at the development section. But when he had to write a development section, he just wrote another tune. He solved that problem. Gershwin has a similar thing, in the larger works. I'll just write something else.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we know that it ain't necessarily so comes from the Haftorah brachot, because Lazar Weiner studied with Schillinger, who is the same composition teacher that Gershwin had. And in fact, Lazar Weiner's lesson was directly after George Gershwin's lesson. And it was Lazar Weiner who told me that famous, what now Jack Gottlieb has really made famous,
right,
about it ain't necessarily so. And the genius of the Gershwin brothers to say that the things that you're liable to teach, that the things that you're liable to learn in the Bible, they ain't necessarily so, and they use Haftorah Trop to teach you that lesson.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
You know the other one where he does the Manishtan in the Best You Is My Woman Now?
Yep.
Morning time and evening time and summertime and winter. It's a Manishtan Halayla has it's
Yep.
right out there.
Right out there. And the reason why is because before he was writing Porgy and Bess, and every story about Porgy and Bess is he was looking for a libretto. Well, why was he looking for a libretto? Because he had already been writing music for an opera on the Dybbuk, but he was forced off that project because of the copyright issues. But there's a lot of, it's like the tritone in West Side Story, where the original characters weren't the Jets but really Jews and Italians.
Yeah.
So, you start with a certain kind of musical information, then the storyline changes, but the musical storyline stays original.
Yeah. I thought it was like the Sharks and the Emeralds or something like that. There was like a name or.
It could be the Bajciks and the whatevers,
Awesome.
Hey, this is great, but now I do have to go and do the rest of my stuff.
Absolutely, Mati. Yeah, this was a treat. Great to see you. Give my love to Vivian and
My pleasure. Thanks so much. Great to be with you. Do me a favor, see if you can send me the recording of this.
yes, I will. Absolutely.
Great.
All right.
A real pleasure, and I can't say
Thank you.
Purim Sameach, but Chag Sameach and Pesach Sheni Sameach too, if we get there.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
My pleasure.
Thanks a
Great to
lot
be
again.